Welcome. Rachel here. And I really send you the warmest welcome in this holiday season because right now we need all the warmth of the heart that we can get. So I'm here to give you hope as we go through this incredibly intense time with the Hamas attack on innocent Israeli citizens, the kidnapping of children, babies, and elders, the now war between Israel and Hamas, where thousands of Palestinians, including children, are being killed as well, with the ongoing grinding conflict in Ukraine, and here in the United States with the incredible intensity of what is going on in Congress, and with the arising with such intensity of the mind of dominion couched in language, the language of fascists. It is so intense. I feel the intensity every day, and it's very, very hard to turn it down, isn't it? The intensity. It's very hard to turn it off. I mean, you can turn off your televisions, you can turn off your social media, your video streams, and yet even then, I think that those of us who are sensitive to energy can feel the intensity just in the world. It's as if we're in this tight cone, this tight vortex, and not only is it stirring up so much on a planetary level, but it's also stirring up a lot deep within us. And I also know personally it can be very, very hard to stay in that place of expanded vision and compassion, and to not fall into the mind of separation and division. And that's what I'm here to talk about, because first, I want us to understand the soul sickness that is the mind of domination. The soul sickness that manifests as a desire on the part of some of the world leaders, on the part of the people who follow them, that if one party, one religion, one nation could just get control and essentially convert or force everyone to follow their way, or to give their nation over, give up their nationhood, their sovereign nationhood, national status over, and become part of a greater nation, that somehow all would be well. All would be well. Or that if somehow, if everyone could follow our particular religious path, could believe exactly what we believe about God, about the nature of the cosmos, about Jesus, that all would be well. This is the soul sickness in humanity that is the mind of domination. And it is a sickness that we, humanity, have been in the grip of for many millennia. So you might ask, okay, so if this has been going on for many millennia, like, what else is there to say about it? Isn't this just natural? Isn't this going to just be the way it always is? Because in fact, I think that, we do incarnate in a planet where, in this particular space-time continuum, where there are these kinds of challenges that arise out of duality. Duality meaning an experience of self as separate from the creation, separated out of spirit, and the separation of ego mind from the great mind, and all these other manifestations of living in this physical universe, in this particular domain of reality. And we are left here, of course, with this experience. And doesn't that always mean, I can hear people say, doesn't that mean that it's just always going to be this way? That there are going to be people, individuals who fall deeply into that world of illusion that is founded on fear and greed and confusion and ignorance, and then they're going to act in ways that we clearly know now in the 21st century are a moral wrong, even a moral evil. I think about this a lot from the point of view of someone who was raised in the Episcopal Church until I was about 7 years old, 6 or 7 years old, maybe a little older. And when I realized even at that young age that Episcopal Church, what they were teaching was that Jesus was the only way. Jesus was the one. That Christianity was the one way, the only right way. Now, I know Episcopalianism has come a long way since then, but I knew this in my bones, and I knew it to be incorrect. I knew that Jesus wouldn't support this idea, this illusion, this concept. So here we are now with everything that is going on between Israel and Palestine. And with that, as horrible as it is, I mean horrible on every level, horrible for Israeli citizens, horrible for all those people that were murdered by Hamas, the women who were raped. As horrible as that is, and as horrible as the retaliation, the way in which Israel is trying to wipe out Hamas, as horrible as that is, I see some glimmers of hope. And so I want to help you take the larger view. And I also see glimmers of hope with Ukraine, even though right now we know that Russia and Ukraine are at, in a way, a grinding standstill in that conflict, in that war. So the one thing that I'm noticing that seems very, very different than, say, when the Vietnam War was raging, it seems very different than even when, through the many, many years of the war in Afghanistan, in the attack against Iran, somehow what is happening, and indeed I think it's because of the very black and white severity of what the Russians are doing to Ukrainians, what Hamas did to the Israelis and what Netanyahu is doing to Palestinians. And I make a distinction between Netanyahu, who is an authoritarian would-be leader, who is making many decisions that many Israelis do not support, do not agree with, even in the face of what Hamas did in October. So what I am hearing as I, look at video streams, read the newspaper, read journals and so on about everything that is going on in the Middle East right now, is I'm hearing the voices of political commentators, historians, of ordinary Americans, of ordinary Israeli citizens, Palestinian citizens, and of people from around the world who are speaking the truth, that this is a terrible wrong. They are speaking with the voices of compassion for all concerned, everybody. Even while there is a sincere and deep acknowledgement of the presence of anti-Semitism in our world that has existed for hundreds of years and that continues today, and of support for Jews, support for Israelis, and at the same time, support for ordinary Palestinians. I feel like we see in the authoritarianism, the madness of Hamas, and in the authoritarianism and the madness of Netanyahu and his cronies. And when I say madness, I mean, I'm not trying to say that they are mentally ill. What I'm saying is that it is this soul sickness, because there is this idea out there, as I've said before, that if we can only take over control, whether it's land, people, if we could only impose our worldview, our way of doing things, our way of worshiping our God on others, that all will finally be well. Because the fact of the matter is that domination is never a good. Never a good. And yes, it is complicated to live in a world where there is so much diversity, so many differences of views and opinions about how to solve the problems we have, so many different religious beliefs and understandings, some of which completely counter one another. And yet this is the world we live in. This is the world that all of us on a soul level chose to live in, because it is also an expression of the most profound creativity, the creativity of the spirit within, through, and around all that is. And that the fact of the matter is that what we see as divisiveness, what we see as those things that separate us, are really those things that bring us together. Because at the core of our religions, at the core of our love of the nation that we live in, or the love of our people, the love of our tribe, is love. Love. It's all love. And what I'm seeing now in the way people are speaking is this powerful, powerful force of love that is shining forth. And it is loving not only to embrace with compassion, the woundedness of everybody concerned, the harm that has been done, continues to be done to all concerned, but also is arising in what people are saying is that this madness finally has to end. If when we get through this, if when there is some kind of negotiated ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, if when, and I say when, there comes a time when everyone lays down their weapons, and then there is this powerful force of change moving through all of humanity that is saying we have to find another way. For better or for worse, the war on Ukraine, what is happening in the Middle East right now, is another wake-up call. Because the soul sickness is appearing with incredible intensity. It's like a virus in the body that creates all these symptoms, right? Of flu, of fever and sweating and headaches, and it's raising our immune system, right? So it's our immune system is having to meet the challenge of driving the virus out of our body. And so I am so moved by the compassion and by the bigger view that so many are bringing. I read an article written by I think it's a CBS commentator, broadcaster, right? And he talked about how he got into he flagged down a cab. He was in a city, and he flagged down a cab, and he got into the cab and realized, so he's an American, and realized that the cab driver was a big Trump supporter, and that the two of them could not have been further apart in terms of their understanding of what is happening in the United States, their view of reality. And instead of falling into silence and refusing and not speaking to this man, this CBS or ABC, I think it was ABC anchor, decided to engage this man in conversation with curiosity. And he said it was such a wonderful conversation, and that it made him understand that in many ways they had some things in common in terms of their concerns. And there was a spirit of being willing to listen to one another and to learn from one another. And at the end of this article that he wrote, he said, it just reminds me that, we need to finally just lay down the weapons and speak human to human. Not ideology to ideology, dogma to dogma, but to remember that fundamentally we all share the same vulnerabilities. And then the question is that how do we get there? How do we get there from where we are today? It seems impossible. So I think that when we call out this, when each of us calls out this will to take over, to control, to dominate, and we call it out by whatever name, fascism, authoritarianism, to try to recreate others in our own image, we have to call it out. Because we know from history, it never works. It didn't work in the former Soviet Union. It isn't working in countries like China. And what I mean by it's not working, I mean I spent time in the former Soviet Union during the Cold War, and I saw the incredible suffering and misery, emotionally, psychologically, financially, economically, that the people lived with. It was terrible. It does not create prosperity, because when you crush the creativity of the human soul, then you eliminate the possibility of abundance for all. When you crush diversity in religious belief, non-religious belief, when you crush the diversity of opinions, you crush the diversity of culture, of self-expression, of belief, you create a wasteland. You spread a viral soul sickness, and then everyone suffers, including the ones who sought to set up this situation. So I feel the energy of powerful transformation right now. This is a healing crisis. And with the healing crisis comes powerful frequencies of transformation, of change. In the same way that World War II and the Holocaust dramatically changed the way we conceived of setting up a peace, a way to somehow maintain a civil society, to maintain a sense, an ability when conflict and differences arise, to have mechanisms to address it, hopefully before it turns into a violent conflagration. And though those mechanisms may not seem to be working very well right now, because there has been a consistent drumbeat of the old paradigm, the patriarchal idea that domination is what serves. And that's the wounded patriarchy, the wounded masculine, not the healthy masculine. That's a topic for another day. So what is different now is that we are unable to remain asleep. And indeed, there are so many hundreds of thousands and millions, perhaps billions of people around the world today who have been working through healing themselves, healing their families, doing meditation, spiritual study, in whatever religious or spiritual way that calls them, that they have been building. We have been building a vibrational frequency that is supporting the healing and the change that is coming. There are many more people now than there were before World War I and World War II on the world stage. Many more people who are the peacekeepers, who are the earth keepers. And I'm not saying they're social or political activists. I'm talking about people like you and me who pray, who meditate, and who are seeking to expand the vibrational frequency of goodness that calls upon the greater nature of humanity, that calls upon that greater nature that is the nature of love, of compassion, and that is the greater nature that will lead us to this future that will emerge out of this time of travails into a better world. We will continue to be a work in progress. That is the nature of being human. And yet, with every step along the way, we get a little bit better. We get a little bit more clear, and maybe more clear in a big way. Take heart, my beloved friends, for history is unfolding, and this is but a drop in the bucket of time. There's so much more to come that is not mind of domination, the soul sickness of violence for violence sake, of violence arising out of greed and fear and hatred and revenge. There is a greater force arising among us. Feel that too. Tune into it in your prayers, in your meditations. And I thank you for all the good work that you are doing and have done. Though we do not know one another necessarily in person, I know that we meet in the higher planes collectively, for we were born for this time, to do just this. And I pray that any goodness that has been generated by my words today be for the benefit of our families, our communities, our global family, Mother Earth, all our relations, that all beings will live free from violence, that all beings will live in peace, that all beings will be fed, that all beings will be loved, that all beings will live in light and peace together. May it be so. Aho, Wado, Amen. Be well, and much love.